Hello students, this is your teacher Anindita Banerjee. Today I am here for the students of class 12. First of all, I would like to tell you that this time also you are having two books in English. The first one is Flamingo, the second one is Vistas. I will start today with the first chapter of Flamingo, the last lesson. Since it is not possible for me to go read the chapter line by line, so I would insist that you should have a look at the chapter that you can see on the screen. The last lesson is a chapter which is set in the days of the Franco-Prussian War, which was fought in the year 1870-71. In this war, Prussia and France were against each other, and Prussia emerged as the winner in the war. After that, it was announced by Prussia that in the districts of Alsace and Lorraine of France, there won't be any more teaching of French language, but instead German should be taught. So the story is based on patriotism, love for the motherland, and love for the mother tongue. The story has been presented by the narrator, who is here a small boy named Franz. He is one of the main character of the story. The other main character of the story is Mr. M. Hamel, the French teacher. The story starts like this. One day, Franz started for his school, but then he felt very reluctant to go to school. What was the reason? The reason was this, that he hadn't learned his homework. He had been given the homework of learning the rules of participle by Mr. M. Hamel, and he was very afraid because Mr. M. Hamel was a very strict teacher. So Franz thought that he should bunk his school that day. Like other children, he was a very restless child. He wanted to go in search of birds' eggs. He wanted to go to the river. He wanted to go to the open field and enjoy his day. But then he thought that no, it's better, he should go to school. So he started for his school. He was already late, so he was in a hurry to reach his class. While going to the school, he was passing by the bulletin board of the district Alsace. And surprisingly, he found a crowd had gathered there. Franz could not understand what was the news that was put up in the bulletin board that day, but he knew that there must be something very shocking or interesting, because in the last 2 years, whatever bad news had come for Franz, that had come from that bulletin board only. As he hurried towards his school, the village blacksmith called him. His name was Watcher, and he told Franz not to hurry. And he said that he will have enough time to go to school. Being a very small child, he could not understand what the blacksmith meant. Anyways, he went to his school. Another surprise was waiting for him after he reached the school. What was it? It was this, that the entire school was in pin drop silence, unlike the other days when, on reaching school, he could hear the students pulling the desks and benches, the students shouting, the children reading their lessons in unison. He could not understand what was the reason. He was too afraid. He thought that he would somehow slip in his classroom because M. Hamel would be busy in teaching the class at that time. But alas, he was caught. As he was going inside his classroom, M. Hamel saw him because all the students were seated at their place. Franz was waiting to get a severe scolding and even punishment from his teacher. But surprisingly, Mr. M. Hamel asked him to take his seat. Franz then turned his eyes in the classroom, and this time he was even more surprised to see that the elderly people of the village, they were sitting at the back benches of the classroom. There was the former mayor, the former postmaster, and old Hauser. Do you know the meaning of Hauser, students? Hauser means a person who provides shelter, or you can say a person who gives a room on rent to other people. And the old Hauser was carrying his elementary book of French language along with him. Franz could not understand what was the matter. And then, as he turned his eyes again towards his teacher, Mr. M. Hamel, he heard his teacher saying, but something again struck him. That was the way Mr. M. Hamel had dressed up. Mr. M. Hamel was wearing a frilled shirt, his coat, and his silk black cap. That was the special dress that M. Hamel used to wear on special occasions. Franz could not understand what was the occasion that day. Then, as his teacher started speaking to them, he was listening with interest because by that time he had understood that indeed there was something special that day. Mr. M. Hamel started telling them that it was the last class that he was taking because an order had come from Berlin that from the very next day a new German teacher will come to the school and will start teaching them German language. The words of Mr. M. Hamel was like a thunderclap for Franz. It was not that Franz was very fond of his teacher, Mr. M. Hamel. Rather, he was very afraid of him and he did not like him. It's not that he did not like him, but he was not even very fond of him. But when he heard these words from Mr. M. Hamel, he felt very bad. And he was having a feeling as if he had missed a chance forever. He was too young. He was not knowing how to write his mother tongue even properly. And now he could understand one thing, that was the last day for him when he could learn anything about his mother tongue. And he was feeling very bad for that teacher who had punished him severely many a times, had beaten him up, he was indeed feeling very bad for him. Mr. M. Hamel was telling the students that this is the nature of human beings, that we always say, I will do the work tomorrow, and we forget the fact that tomorrow never comes. M. Hamel told the students that the reason why they don't know their mother tongue properly is because they always thought they are having enough time to learn it. And now they could see that their time is up. M. Hamel was also blaming the parents because the parents thought that it was better for them to send their children to the fields to work and earn money for the family instead of sending them to school. And Mr. M. Hamel was blaming himself as well, because many a times when Mr. M. Hamel wanted to go for fishing, he would give a holiday to the students. Sometimes instead of teaching them, he asked them to go and water his plants. So he was blaming himself as well. And now Mr. M. Hamel was telling them that they should never give up their mother tongue. Once they give up their mother tongue, they will be enslaved forever. They should keep in touch with their mother tongue. They should practice talking, writing in it, so that they have the feeling of freedom in them. M. Hamel was trying to make the children understand why mother tongue is so important for us. Franz then understood why even the elderly people of the village were sitting there in the classroom. Mr. M. Hamel told them that he will first start with the lessons of grammar. And he started teaching. Franz, as if was mesmerized as he was listening to M. Hamel's teaching. And so surprising it was that he could understand each and everything taught by Mr. M. Hamel. Franz was least interested in French, and even in the previous classes he could hardly follow M. Hamel's teaching. But that day he thought that maybe Mr. M. Hamel was teaching in the best possible way, and because he was giving his complete attention towards it, so he was able to follow it. He was listening and he understood everything, and he started taking interest in the language. He was regretting a lot for not being serious enough before with his mother tongue, and he was feeling very bad that day, that from the very next day he won't get this teacher in the school. After completing the lesson on grammar, Mr. M. Hamel started teaching them something on writing. and he gave the students a copy. To each child he gave a copy, and on the cover page of the copy he had written Alsace and France. All the students were writing with rapt attention, but Franz at times was looking at Mr. Aimhammer, trying to find out what his teacher was thinking. And whenever his eyes fell on Mr. Aimhammer, he could see that the man was turning his eyes in the classroom, was looking outside the window as if he was capturing everything with his eyes, as if he was capturing the memories in his brain. Franz was feeling very bad. And then, when it was around 12 o'clock, the bell from the church could be heard. Mr. Aimhammer stood up and told the class it was the bell from the church announcing the people to gather there for mass prayer. Mr. Aimhammer stood up. The students could understand, and they could see that the elderly people of the village all were crying. Aimhammer was ready to leave the class. The Prussian soldiers could be seen coming back, marching. Aimhammer stood up and turned towards the blackboard, and in bold letters he wrote on the blackboard, "Vive la France," which means "Long live France." He tried to say something to the students, but his voice choked, and the man made a gesture with his hands, announcing the students to disperse. The students left, and the last lesson of Mr. Aimhammer came to an end. I hope, students, I have been able to make you understand as far as possible in this video of mine. Hope you will get some benefit from it. Thank you.